First of all, I would like to thank you all very much for being here, Tom and Jean-Paul, of course, in Verbier. The dream was that we would, most of us, be here, but there were several things that stood in the way, like today the snow and, of course, the pandemic. But that doesn't mean that we cannot have a great virtual debate for our virtual platform. I would like to hand over to Jean-Paul, who's the moderator of this debate and who invited you all to attend the 2021 summit. Thank you again.
Thank you, Anneliek. Well, we will talk with 4 people. There is the Swiss artist Claudia Comte. She is in the studio in the region of Basel. Hello, Claudia. I remember the first time I worked with Claudia is, wow, maybe is 10 years ago. And I decided to invite also another person, a specialist of environment, is Tom Battin. Is here with me in Verbier now. Tom, you are a teacher, professor at the EPFL, and you work also for Ecole. We'll talk about that. It's a special center in Sion, in Valais. I invited Madeleine Schuppli. Madeleine, you are in Zurich. You are now head of visual art department at Helvetia, and you are the former director of Kunsthaus Aarau. We work, when I was in Paris at the Centre Culturel Suisse, we worked together on a special exhibition like Myriam Kahn, I remember, beautiful artist. And Hedy Graber, you are also in Zurich. Hello, Hedy. And I remember I was with Hedy at the university. It was in 19 something like that. Before the...
It was in the 80s, to be honest.
Yeah, in the 80s, okay. Before the breakdown of the wall in Berlin. It's an old story, but well, you are now, and from a lot of years, director of the Pourcent Culturel Migros. I think it's the largest private cultural support in Switzerland. You will talk about that. And for my part, I'm now director of an art school in Valais. The EDHEA is one of the 3 art schools in French part of Switzerland. And before I was co-director of the Centre Culturel Suisse, Swiss Cultural Center in Paris, who is one part of Helvetia for France. Well, I will begin this debate with Claudia, the artist before. We are in a Verbier Art Summit.
I actually come from Switzerland, a very small village near Lausanne, where I grew up surrounded by nature and trees and forest and animals. And this very much influenced my work of today. And I did the art school in Lausanne, Ecole. And after my time in Berlin, and after having traveled a lot for different residencies, as well with Helvetia in South Africa or in LA, or I was in Rome as well for a year at the Swiss Institute. So after having moved a lot, I really felt the need to come back to the source, meaning to come back to the countryside. And now since a year, I'm in the countryside near Basel, where I bought a house, a self-sustainable house, and where I built my studio as well to produce my paintings and woodwork. And yeah, I'm very happy in this surrounding because it feels more true to my very desire to be close to nature. It's a house that is completely isolated, so we have no neighbors. The first neighbors are a kilometer away. Within my studio, we are looking for a way to calculate the carbon footprint of each of mainly the shows, so the projects, which then bring us to each of the sculpture or paintings. And by this, I think when we understand how the work or how much carbon footprint is produced, when and how, we can then understand how to reduce it. But obviously the main problem is the transport of the artwork, because in my case, I work very local with wood and sometimes with marble, and Tom explained also the problem that we have now excavating those mountains since more than 2000 years. And so the reality is that everything that we are doing leave a footprint behind. So that's a big worry, is how to improve production and how to do best. And I think one of the key is the time, really. For example, in terms of transport, it's much better not to hurry a transport and have kind of slow motion transport than fast one, for example, using air freight. Um, so that would be one idea. Obviously now, having this house and studio here, it brings lots of environmental question as well. And my whole staff is more aware of, not bringing plastic bottle, for example. We cannot use paints that are bad for the environment, because everything goes back into the soil here, since we are not linked, connected with the city or village or anything. We have the septic tank that is working directly with the house as well. So any product we are using, we have to be careful with. So I was already aware of that, but now it makes even more sense to do the right move, really. And another thing is that I'm planting trees for each sculpture I'm doing. I replant two trees. So I find ways like that just feels like a right place and the right thing to do to really protect what we can save still. And that's the main point, I guess. Try to really protect what's still here, because we have lost so much already.
Thank you, Claudia. I think we go now to Tom. Can you define the lines of work on your approach of this theme, of this debate, in your scientist work and your artistic work?
Perhaps just to understand historically, or by background, I'm trained as a zoologist, and I'm trained as an ecologist, right? And as we speak, I'm a professor at EPFL, and my studio, my lab, is at EPFL, and soon, in a year from now, with the EPFL Center for Alpine and Alpine and Polar Environmental Research, it's the Ecole, in Sion, which is going to be a unique setting, highly interdisciplinary in nature, where several researchers or professors try to understand how the polar and how the alpine environment is changing today, right? And so we all understand that we are living in the Anthropocene, human-made. And so our job now is to kind of understand, to predict, to anticipate, and hopefully also to mitigate what we have started so well, right? Changing our world. And so now, being an environmental scientist, I try to understand the alpine environment, right? And so we can see here around in Verbier the alpine environment as beautiful as it can be. Now it's snow covered, but if we remove the snow, we see the traces, right, that we left. So there's infrastructure for various purposes, etc. So basically, we left a kind of a footprint all around, up to the highest mountains worldwide. Today we are aware that we can find microplastics in the deepest ocean, as well as we find microplastics on the top of the Himalayan, right, on the Mount Everest, actually, right? So we're all around, right? So it's time now to sit down and, try to understand how the environment works, and try to understand, so what can we do? What do we have to change, right? So how can we do it better, right? And so this is basically my professional motivation. And so here I'm working at something that at the first glance you would ask yourself, so what the heck does this have to do with the big picture? So in my lab, we work on the biodiversity of the unseen, which are the microbes, bacteria, for instance. And so we ask questions, for instance, what is the role of these bacteria in the mountain streams? These are the guys, right, that basically orchestrate, that drive the biogeochemical cycles of our planet, right? So when we talk about like greenhouse gases, for instance, like carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, etc., most of this comes from microbial activities, right? So we need to understand what are the microbes out there so that we can understand indeed, right? So what are the implications of these microbes for the biogeochemistry? What are the implications of these microbes for the water to be clean? They purify the water so that we can drink the water, right? So understanding this better, right, and training a new generation of future scientists, that's basically my motivation, right? So, but I'm doing very fundamental, very basic research, and I'm extremely privileged that I'm able to do that. And very often, so it's insightful driven. And you know, whenever we start our journey, we never know what comes out. So we never know what the outcome is, and that's really thrilling. That's very exciting, and that's also how discoveries are being made, for instance. So and there, I think it's important as a scientist to keep a kind of a childish behavior to some extent, right? Because and that brings me to art now. Right? It's not that artists are childish, I hope they are, to some extent, but what is important is the creativity, right? So artists are creative, and so are scientists, or so should scientists be, right? Because without this kind of seed of creativity, it's really hard to push frontiers hard, or to move behind frontiers, so to really advance science. Project, we try to find universal laws, basically, right? Whenever I see these landscapes, typically I have my camera with me, and I start taking pictures, right? And when I do so, I'm disappearing. I'm disappearing completely. I'm becoming part of the landscape in a very almost intimate relationship with the landscape, and I'm start to breathe with the landscape. And for me, besides the science that I'm doing, which is of course something, you know, it's the brain that works there. And when I'm out there as a so-called photographer, it's another part of my personality, right, that works there. And I think it's very important for me to kind of converge these two sides, or these two aspects of mine, to well understand the environment.
Thank you, Tom. I hear now two things between Claudia and Tom, two words. One is slow. You talk about the slow, to be more slow, Claudia. And Tom, you talk about, in the beginning, sit down. It's time to sit down, to think about, I think, in reaction to productivity, because productivity is our society. And when I'm as a director of an art school, the young artist, the young student want to produce is the other part. Now I want to go to Zurich to talk with Madeleine.
Okay, thank you, Jean-Paul. As a start, I would like briefly introduce Helvetia and then attack the topics that you're bringing up. I mean, Helvetia is the Swiss Culture Foundation with the headquarters in Zurich. And our goal is to promote and disseminate Swiss art and culture and to stimulate international exchange. Helvetia has over 100 employees who work in Switzerland as well as in our international offices spread more or less around the globe. And I'm there the head of the visual arts department, where I'm responsible for all the projects and requests in the field of the visual arts as well as architecture. And together with my team, I'm also responsible for the Swiss contributions to the biennial of Venice. And I would say issues regarding environment are important for our work within the foundation and also for our collaboration with partners. Within the organization, there has been guidelines that have been implemented. They define our behavior, our daily work. And the main focus at this stage is on traveling. And the goal is that the whole staff, of course, travels in a reduced and responsible way. Besides that, let me pick up two projects that are also closely linked to ecological questions. One is a program that we had on last year. It was called Home Not Alone, and it's about staying at home but being connected. And one of the participants of the project was Serge Diakota from Kinshasa, and the idea of the project was to find a new way for our residency programs for artists and exchanges for artists. And since traveling was still is not possible, the program tries to bring together artists that stay physically at home, but are connected digitally among each other in a very intense way. The idea came up due to the COVID pandemic, of course, but it also has an ecological impact. It makes us think about building international networks without the necessity of traveling. So that is quite a key issue to us. Another project I just would like to mention is PolArts. It's a new instrument of the foundation, a call for proposal for interdisciplinary projects between art, science, and technology. I think Tom and Claudia could maybe hand in a project together for that. That would be perfect. And which is one of the supported projects recently is a collaboration between the Zurich University of the Arts and the Paul Scherrer Institute. And this project will focus on anthropogenic climate changes. And I would like to react on a theme that was brought up already by Claudia and Jean-Paul, and a theme that I was very close to during my work in the museum. These challenges that we are confronted, or the artists are also confronted, regarding the shipment of artworks. And of course, there's a constant pressure on the artists of production. And I just recently wrote a very interesting interview with Hito Steyrl, and she was talking about the obsession of the art world with new work, mainly for marketing reasons. Museums and galleries want to show fresh goods. And this is, of course, an attitude that is everything but sustainable. So that is certainly something we need to work on.
Thank you, Madeleine. Thank you a lot. We continue in Zurich with Hedy. Hedy, there is a big pressure, not a little, a big pressure on you, because you are director of Pourcent Culturel Migros from now to 4. It's a long period. And Pourcent Culturel Migros is the largest private cultural institution in Switzerland. In the middle of art in Switzerland, we say that is the Minister of Culture is Pourcent Culturel Migros. And I don't know if the people knows internationally what is Pourcent Culturel Migros. You need to talk about that. But when your decision are taken by a structure like Pourcent Culturel Migros, the impact is very important because it's a very important structure. And what is for you this relationship between a problem like environment on this situation now, and what do you do with Migros?
Thank you very much also for having me at this talk, Jean-Paul. Thank you for the invitation. But so let me just give you a brief idea about what we do. The Migros Cultural Percentage is actually a voluntary initiative by Migros in the fields of culture, society, education, and leisure. And the idea of the Migros Cultural Percentage was first brought up actually by Migros founder Gottlieb Duttweiler in 1957. So we're kind of an old institution. What makes us quite special is that in accordance with the wishes of Gottlieb Duttweiler, Migros commits to making a yearly contribution to the Migros Culture Percentage, which is related and calculated on the basis on turnover. And this makes us a solid and stable funder. What is also very special is that as a corporate objective, the Migros Culture Percentage is placed on an equal footing with commercial success. So we are not a marketing institution, but we are somehow independent. Now, Jean-Paul, what is the role we try to play? We like to see ourselves as a catalyst that seeks to work together with other private and public organizations. We realize somehow our own projects, but we also provide support for projects of individuals, artists, in the form, of course, of financial contributions. Maybe for this debate, I mentioned just some of our many activities. You might know our Migros Museum for Gegenwartskunst, which is a player for international contemporary art founded in 1996. And when you look at the program of the museum right now, our exhibitions last very long because they're not open. We have this exhibition curated by our director, Heike Munder, Potential Worlds. And the exhibition actually focuses on the relationship between humans and nature in the light of today's ecological situation. So the consequence of environmental devastation have made it plain that we need to understand humanity to be an integral part of rather than the center of the world. And the exhibition had a first chapter, Potential Worlds, Planetary Memories, turned the spotlight actually on the ways in which humans took possession of the natural world in pursuit of power and resources, and the repercussions for nature as well as communities, as you already addressed before. So we have as an instrument an own institution where we can play this kind of topics, and we have also different projects in which we try to address this topic. Maybe I just mentioned another new initiative of the Cultural Percentage, a program called M2ACT. M2ACT is a funding and network project which supports initiatives in the performing arts. And right now we're supporting an initiative called Klimakontor in Basel, or another initiative called Gaststube, Homemade Climate Conference by a collective called Gaststube. We have not enough time to go in deeper in these initiatives, maybe later. I just wanted to add that since 2012, we have a new funding, which is Engagement Migros, which is a voluntary development of the fund of the Migros group. And I had a chance to develop this fund together with Stefan Schöbi and his teams in the last 8 years. And there we try to support pioneers who want to help shape a better world, as we like to say, or a better society. And I just mentioned maybe a project called Move the Date. That is Move the Date Switzerland project that wants to postpone the date when the resources actually would have been used of by the whole population. Briefly, what we do.
Thank you, Hedy. Now I want we go in the debate for the discussion between the 3 points, the key points: hope, future, and trust. It was the choice of Jessica Morgan.
Exactly, so those were her ideas that came out of the 2020 summit, and she pointed 3 questions that we will debate in all the international debates as well.
Well, the first one, hope. How can the artist take environmental issue into consideration in his work?
No, I think artists have to address the problem of our time, and obviously we cannot see a bigger problem now than the climate crisis. So besides doing art for art, as you mentioned before, which is also essential, as human, we are creating and producing artworks, and this is one of the beauty and pleasure in life, I think, at least for me. Besides this, it's obviously so important to address those problematic. So, well, I'm personally learning every day what can be done, and as everyone, I think we are asking those questions also now in the debate. What can be done? It's very tricky, but I think young artist students from our school also, they already, I think, understood, because they look at the news, and they are also part of a new generation now that understand we have to create less waste, and most of all consume less meat, and if possible no meat at all, for example. So that's something I do personally since quite some time now. I cannot, well, at the moment no one travels, but when things can go somehow back to normal, shows and exhibition around the world will hopefully start again. And I think now we can ask ourselves one more time, is this essential that I will go now to install this show? I hope people will still be able to travel and install exhibition, because obviously a Zoom meeting cannot replace the human contact. So this is very important. But it just proves me, a few days ago I installed a show in Berlin in my gallery at König, and we installed everything remoted, and it worked. Obviously it was sad not to see each other, but that's also possible. So yeah, having said that, it's yes, something can be done in this direction. So yeah, I think everyone needs to maybe see the priorities into their life and work. And for example, since I cannot cut completely the travels, I just cut the meat, which equals somehow, and this is for many reasons, obviously the environment, but also the animals on themselves. And yeah, there are solutions, and many people and scientists especially worked on those and white books. And if you are interested, and if you have empathy and curiosity and hope for the future, you better get informed to understand what to do in your personal life.
Tom, reaction from you. You are a professor at EPFL. You work also with a lot of students.
We have hope. No, I mean, hope is very important, and I think hope is one of the is a very pronounced and a feature of human mankind, right? It's very much intrinsic to our nature, and sometimes we're losing hope a little bit, and so whenever we lose hope, it's good to get back to have the big picture, the grand picture, and I think it's important to have that big picture, right? And when coming to students, for instance, you know, to convey to them, right, how things are going, etc., right? And what we are living now, or what we are going through now, that this is only part of it, right? And let's not forget the rest of the big picture, right? So for me, that's one part of the related to hope. For me, it's really like it's pleasure, right? So it's really like the pleasure that, talking for myself and some of my colleagues that I have, it's like the pleasure that we have with the work that we do in science. But for Claudia, it's the same in her studio, for instance, or in her workshop, right? It's so nurturing, right? And without being nurtured on a daily basis, right? Without having the big picture, right? And that's the good thing with aging, it's the wisdom, right? Without that, we are lost, right? But we have it and we are privileged, right? And that's something that we have to pass over, right? And that's also what I hopefully try to be able to do when I'm as a professor at EPFL, and when I'm giving the class, right? When I'm explaining to the students, okay, so that's where we are, right? And that's the knowledge that we still have to get in order to be able to change something, right?
And with a good word is pleasure. Pleasure. I come to Zurich for the institution. Really, can the institution promote this action, or is only the surface? Madeleine.
Also regarding your previous question, I think it's not so problematic if we think of the artists, what is their role, what can they do regarding climate change. I think, especially for a young generation, they're very much aware, I think, of many of these topics, maybe more than the older generation. And there I'm quite optimistic. And I think besides that, we can expect from artists that they really attack and they are aware of the crucial themes of today. They are not so much the problem. It's more the problem of the art world, or I would call it the art circus, traveling around, being present everywhere, being and making lots of trips around the world, using enormous amount of resources just to meet up, to see fresh art here and there, and the whole crowd is traveling around the globe the whole time. Quickly to the role of the funding institutions like Helvetia or Migros. Don't know what Hedy thinks about it, but I would say through the decisions that we are taking, we can have quite an impact through the projects that we are promoting, through the initiatives that we are taking. We were hearing about some initiatives of Helvetia or of Migros just before. So there, I think we can have quite an impact with our work.
Hedy, hope is still important for you?
Hope, always.
Thank you.
Never give up hope. No, never give up hope. But so many things were said already. I want to take up maybe 2 points. In this whole discussion, what I also find interesting is that we are trying now to fund projects that are made in a co-creative, collaborative way, not only between artists of several disciplines, but maybe also between arts and science, whatever, you name it. And what for us is also important, we have changed our system of funding actually last year, and we now invest in 2 parts. The first one is actually the ideation situation. Ideation means where artists try out ideas, where they have to do research, where they have to find partners, where they have to be interested in collaborations. And money used to be hard to find there because there is no production yet, there is no result yet, but there is just maybe some kind of an idea or some kind of interest in a topic. And I think this might be also something that can make art production a bit more sustainable. If we speak about theater, for instance, you know that people, they play maybe in the city where they produce their piece in Switzerland, but they don't go on tour because sometimes it's too difficult. They have not enough funding. So we have this ideation part and we have the diffusion part. We're only working in Switzerland. So, and I am also very fond of this newer generations that think without borders and without out of their own discipline also. And I see a lot of energy there. We are going to launch a project during this year for the next generation. I don't know the title of the project yet, but it will also be a very collaborative project. It was mentioned that yes, people want to see new work all the time, but we invest really in the productions, and then we buy also these works for our collection. So we have the whole circle. These pieces, some of them, of course, they also go elsewhere, but we try to produce art and also integrate it in our collection. But we can do it, of course, because we are a private institution with a lot of freedom also. And freedom is always hope.
Yeah, thank you, Hedy.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the discussion that we are having now, so it turns a little bit around the question how to get the art out of the studio, right? So, Madeleine, you mentioned the art circus, etc. And so there are beautiful parallels, again, to the world that I'm coming from, so the science and the research, right? So we calling this dissemination, right? And so ironically, or as absurd as it is, before COVID-19, there were huge international conferences on an annual basis, right? For instance, on climate change. So guess what, right? There were thousands of people traveling to San Francisco, traveling to Tokyo, traveling to wherever around the world to take part in these conferences, right? So this in itself is kind of absurd, right? And I do think, even with some hope perhaps, that this, once we were able to overcome the pandemics, that this will change the way scientists gonna meet in the future to exchange, for instance.
May I just add, Tom, to this topic? I found it interesting because my resources don't allow me to travel a lot and to be part of this whatever called circus. So on the global level, I was really missing everything. But since the pandemic, I have access. Lately, I was part of a discussion with people in India and in San Francisco, and I was like, whoa, finally. Yes. I get access to this, and before I didn't have it. And it was not only because we didn't know how to use technology, it was, as you said, because the circus is very close and you have to meet there and you have to go there.
Yeah. Well, I will continue because time passes, and there is 3 points. I go to with you, Tom, to the second point. We will talk after hope about future. And I don't know if there is the same hope for the future. Can we be inspired by the past, or should we reconsider the future as a whole? The time is very large for a scientist. It's not just today and tomorrow. Yeah. What do you think about that?
So first of all, perhaps we have to be aware of like what we call legacies or memory effects, right? And this is, of course, the link in time between the past, the now, and the future. Right? So there can't be any now, there won't be any future without the now or the past respectively, right? And this is even encoded in our genes, right? So there we call this like inherited traits or whatever, right? So we carry the past with us all the time, and so do ecosystems, for instance, so does the environment, right? And this is a pretty new way of thinking and trying to understand how the environment works. So today we think that the environment does have a memory from past environmental events, for instance, right? So I mean, just to close this parenthesis, perhaps, right? Let's even not think that there will be a future, right? Without considering what we are doing now, right? Or what has happened in the past, right? So now, during these discussions, we were kind of hovering a little bit around the topic of what we call the Anthropocene, right? And I mean, the Anthropocene, there has been, and it's still ongoing, a debate in the science community if we should even give this name to a new era or to a new epoch, right? Because before it was the Holocene, etc., etc. So these were times in Earth's history that were mostly shaped by geological processes or by geophysical processes, right? And now humans, we have taken over, right? We have overwhelmed the strength, the power of these processes, right? And this will have a huge, huge legacy for the next, for hundreds of years. So whatever we do today, right, will have repercussions to what happens tomorrow and the day tomorrow, etc.
Future or no future?
Well, there's always a future. There's always a future. And I mean, just to tell you, I mean, that's also what I try to convey to the students. May not be our future, but it may be the future of some animals, maybe the future of some plants, right? It definitely is the future of microorganisms, right? And we don't accept the fact, right, that we are part of universal natural laws, right? And our body, for instance, it's something like 70% water, right? So to nurture this body, we need clean water. We need clean air to breathe, right? So these are universal laws, right? Whatever we do, the more we deteriorate our environment, the more energy we would have to spend, right, to get from somewhere clean water, right, to get from somewhere clean air, right? So it's becoming a vicious circle, right? And we have to get out of that vicious circle, and probably the best solution to get out there, science and research do know enough. We do know, we do understand the causes, right? Why we arrived where we are, right? We do understand that why we have climate warming or global warming. We do understand this. It's now time to act, right? And I think the only way to get out of that vicious circle is to stop worshipping the indefinite economical growth, right? Yeah. It's time to kind of get from quantity to quality, right? And, you know, getting to quality, right, to sustainability, right? This will again kind of stimulate, right, you know, new areas that do help with economical growth, right? But there's what we call in ecology a carrying capacity. It's a plafond, it's a ceiling, right? And there's no way to get through that one. These are the so-called planetary boundaries. We have boundaries, right? And for some of them, we are way behind them already.
Claudia, I will come to you for this point. Can you evoke your residency in Yekaterinburg in about legacy? It was in 2015.
It was very fascinating for me to understand that trees have in their very own body all those information, and by recreating this climate, looking at those rings, yeah, I found it fascinating that I'm myself work with wood that is from our time. Obviously, the wood that we were analyzing at the time at the Ural Mountains were wood that were kept into the permafrost, so wood trees that lived long ago. And yeah, the story somehow is is repeating on itself.
Are we doing enough things, or should we do more? What do you think, Hedy? You have trust on the future?
Of course, we should always do more. But the question for me is, do we the right thing, considering the right options? And I would start from a bit an image. What is the society in which we want to live in the future, in a society, a world that is good for future generations, and what can we do today to make this future world, even if we don't know how it looks, a livable world. Of course, we have ecology, but we have also aspects of diversity. We have different aspects we have to consider, and it's all on a hypothesis now. But I think we have really to listen carefully. And Tom said also the changes now we have with COVID, with the pandemic situation. I think we never do enough, but we have to be totally aware that we don't know what is right, that it's an experiment, and that we have to be open for this experiment, and that's also open end, of course. And I think that we have also to be able to trust somehow in a situation where we don't know the end, but where we see where parameters are, and we should stop investing there. Where it doesn't make sense, where maybe things have seen their time and they're not relevant for the future. And this mostly hurts because we're all part of generations that we're used to having a certain amount of things, also life standards maybe in certain countries for certain persons. I think we have to go into radical change, also on an economic level. And but yes, I think we have to do many things, but we have also to trust the experiment. We have to trust also chance is also important. Also in arts and in science, sometimes chance happens, and maybe this also makes solutions for further generations also somehow possible.
Madeleine, Prodesia is a public institution in direct relationship with the state, with the Conseil Fédéral and the Parliament. Do you trust in the politician, in the decision of the politician for your work and for the artists and for the future?
I think one theme, of course, is the sustainability, and we were mentioning before how can we learn from the past, and I think we certainly can learn from the past, especially our generation, because when it comes to ecological question, every generation before us did better than we did, so we can always learn from our grandparents already. And so this sharing quality or a sharing culture or a reuse culture, these are themes that are quite prominently used in cultural art scene, and I think promising. But of course, we have what was his difficulty is that these economic aims on a political level now that you were referring to as well are often, or are people think they are in conflict with ecological goals, and that is kind of a main problem. And I think we have to work around this. We need to bring these together. If they're in a conflict, then we can't go on, and then we're always a bit slow, or too slow also. I mean, because yeah, we're already behind, so we need to act now, or we would have needed to act yesterday already. So
thank you, Hedy, Madeleine, Claudia, and Tom. and Lick for the invitation. It was beautiful.
Thank you very much. It was great.
Welcome to the live Q&A session of the Verbier debate. My name is Annelixie Brandy and I'm the founder of the Verbier Art Summit. As we only have 10 minutes, I will move straight to the questions. And Madeleine, can you please turn off your phone because we're live now? And I have a question for all of you. It's a question from Georgina Turner to all. Does the panel see the green economy? Madeleine, can you turn off your phone, please? This is live, people. Madeleine is on a short delay. So we have a question from the audience for you all. Does the panel see the green economy as a revolution in our collective beliefs and how we assess the quality of our lives? Jean-Paul, maybe to you? Should I repeat the question?
We cannot hear you, Angelique.
Unmute me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, with an echo. So, it's a question from Georgina Turner.
Again now.
Unmute it now.
You would have to unmute, Annelien.
Yeah.
You're muted, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
We'll try to imagine the first question.
Shall I unmute? Fridjan? No.
There's an echo.
Okay.
Oh, it's an echo to the world.
You must be on a mountain.
Let's see, is it better now? Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, so the question was from Georgina Turner to all. Does the panel see the green economy as a revolution in our collective beliefs and how we assess the quality of our lives?
Yes, this question is for everybody. It's normal, but for me, it was a good question for Hedy Graber, but she's not here because it's the birthday now, today. And I think, Madeleine, what is the situation for the artists, for the art world with green economy? With sound.
Oh, that's really a difficult question. It's such a big question with overarching everything. I'm not sure what to say. Maybe
It's difficult.
let Tom and Claudia start. That's really difficult, I think.
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, for me too. I'm sorry.
No problem.
You're
It's
breaking up a
difficult.
little bit.
It's difficult.
Does the panel see the green economy as a revolution in our collective beliefs and how we assess the quality of our lives?
First of all, I don't think that this is a revolution. I think it's an absolute necessity, and hopefully a necessity that does not come too late, right? I think that the green economy is it's a great opportunity as well. So for me, that's what I can contribute to this. As it's quite a complex one, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So maybe we move on to the second question then, Tom, which is also for you. In your research of ecosystems, how do you define the system of reference and what is the role of creativity in that?
Lovely. Okay, I like that one. So a reference, so the problem is that we are losing references, right? As we live in the Anthropocene, we have changed most of our ecosystems to a point that today it's hard to say what is really like a reference or pristine ecosystem, an ecosystem that has not yet been influenced by humanity, right? So we know that even the remotest spot on Earth, such as the Mount Everest or the deep sea, there we find microplastics, for instance, right? So we're all around, basically. And then, like, as for the creativity, so the question is, what is the role of creativity in my research? So in order to push the frontiers in research art, it's quite important to be creative, right? It's important to kind of ventilate new ideas, to come up with new hypotheses, etc. And that's where creativity is. It's quite critical, actually.
Thank you. I have a question.
If I reverse the question, I reverse the question for the artist. For me, the art is very important. What is the role of a scientist, the science for the artist? The relation of creativity and science.
Well, so I guess it's a question for me now, right?
Yeah.
I am the artist.
You are the artist.
I mean, but we have seen what the debate brought to for Tom or me. I think it's also, at least for an artist like me, it's also a necessity to join forces and to speak together, because the scientists work with data and are very much close to what is happening at the moment, and maybe sometimes doesn't know exactly how to communicate their information, and hopefully maybe somehow we can find a way by working together to communicate those. And I think it's very exciting for artists to be able to speak with scientists, because they have such a knowledge that we have not access otherwise.
Thank you. I have a question for Madeleine. Has the pandemic led Pro Helvetia to rethink on how and what you support and promote, or have all the more environmentally friendly initiatives been developed pre-COVID?
These initiatives that I was talking about were actually designed and conceived pre-COVID, or it started last year but also before. There was already this intention to put economic, ecological questions on in our program. But there's more awareness for the subject certainly now. And now we really try to react to the pandemic and adjust our the way we fund. Also, we talk also with the players, with the artists, with the institutions, to see what their needs are, how we can support them better, and adjust everything to the current situation.
Thank you. I have a question for Claudia from Georgina Turner. Do you consider being an artist as a kind of being, a quality of life?
The kind of
being
in quality of life? Like if I apply my thoughts, the thoughts I have, my view through my work, also in my personal life? Is it okay? I'm not sure I understand, but that's
maybe we stick to the first bit. Do you consider being an artist as a kind of being?
Kind of being.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand the question. Yeah, but well, what I can say is that yeah, I have worries and a certain passion that I like to transmit through my work, and I cannot separate my personal life than my artistic work. Everything is one, and I'm trying to live out of my passion and my interest into the environment and nature, and I think this can be seen through my work as well.
Super. Thank you for answering that complicated question. We have another question that is for all of you. What do you think will be the legacy of this pandemic for more environmental-oriented thinking in the art world?
I don't know if it's a good legacy, because the problem is the productivity and the political. And we need to be very attentive, clear about the situation. COVID take a lot of place, and in correspondence with the problem of climate and environment. And I don't know what will be tomorrow.
How about
Maybe
you?
Tom.
Well, I don't know what's tomorrow, but like again, you know, being optimistic, I hope that there's a chance that like art can also take from the pandemic, and just as we meet here via Zoom, etc. So there may be new avenues being opened to disseminate art better to an even broader, wider public all around the world that otherwise would not have access to art. So that's, for instance, you know, that would be a positive point of a kind of a legacy that the pandemic may leave.
Mm-hmm. I also think this difficult situation that we're going through would be a chance to learn from it and to change certain things. But yeah, that's not obviously happening. And therefore, I think it's really important that we talk and think about it now, because when the pandemic one day hopefully is over or is not, we don't have these restrictions anymore, then there will be a need to go back to normal as soon as possible. I think that's just a human reaction, a natural reaction. So we have to think about it now, take maybe certain decisions, how we want to restart after this, and follow then these the objectives that we design now.
Wonderful. Well, this brings us already to the end of this very short Q&A. But I wanted to thank you all so much as our new Swiss speakers that you joined the 2021 Verbier Art Summit platform. So thank you for all your time and many, many Zoom calls that we had to prepare for this. And thank you all for watching. We are going to our next debate, which is the New York debate. So stay tuned.